Welcome to Extraordinary Ability with your host, Candice Ackermann. Every episode celebrates foreign nationals with extraordinary abilities who qualify for O1, EB1, and IW visas. You can find this show on YouTube, LinkedIn, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on www.visalawpros.com. Now here's the host of Extraordinary Ability, Candice Ackermann.
Hi, everyone. I'm Candice Ackermann, founder and managing attorney of visalawpros.com. And we are back with another fun episode of Extraordinary Ability after a brief hiatus. I know you guys were very anxious for the next podcast drop. And I'm very happy and delighted to have a very special guest who has such an interesting career. We're going to have a lot of fun on today's episode. And special guest, please introduce yourself. Tell us where you're from and what your area of extraordinary ability is.
Hi, Candice. I'm so happy to be here and to see you. Thank you so much for inviting me to be on this podcast. My name is Sarah Wilner. I'm originally from Canada, and I've lived in Israel for the past 20 years. So I'm Canadian and Israeli. And my extraordinary ability is an early childhood education coordinator, which means I work in early childhood education, in humanitarian disasters and emergency situations.
Okay, so just to clarify for the viewers, if you're coordinating early childhood education programs, what does that actually mean? Like, what does your day-to-day life look like? And I guess we can add the, special sauce of what does that look like if you're dealing with people, children who are coming from, difficult, challenging situations. Give us a little more detail about what your day-to-day work life looks like.
Okay, sure. So actually, I started off as a teacher and a special education teacher, and I also worked for the UN Agency for Refugees, and I ended up working for many years in Mashav, Israel's Agency for International Development, where I coordinated all the early childhood education programs. And so what I did was I created training programs for people coming all over the world in early childhood education development. And through my experience working in different areas in the world, I worked in Africa and in Asia and in Europe and also in the Middle East. I saw that specifically in humanitarian crises and emergency situations, very often the youngest children, their developmental needs are overlooked. So we have a lot of international organizations that are working in helping with shelter or helping with nutrition. But when it comes to providing opportunities for children to grow and develop, providing early childhood development programs and education programs, that's something that really lacks for the youngest children. The older children will be going to school, and the younger children will be at home, usually with their parents in very difficult situations, and there's very little opportunity for them. Now that, coupled with the fact, and this we know in many researches that have happened throughout the world, we know that early childhood, this time in your life, is the most important time in someone's life. What happens in your early years impacts you for the rest of your life. Not only impacts your learning and your education throughout your life, but also your well-being and your happiness. So if we can create early childhood development programs for young children in humanitarian areas and crisis situations that provide an opportunity for them to develop and to grow and to learn, no matter where they are, we know that we're also going to affect the way they are for the rest of their lives, their happiness, their well-being, their success. So that's where I saw there was a really big need. And I saw that there was a lot of organizations that were not actually looking specifically at this young age. So when I say young, it's like 0 to 8, 0 to 7. Most 5, 6, 7-year-olds will be going to school. So right now in the programming that I'm doing, it's working 0 to 4. And we started, me and a colleague of mine, we started an organization called Early Starters International, and it focuses on exactly that, providing programming for young children in different areas in the world where there's a lack and they don't have access to it. We're working in Ukraine and in the surrounding countries of Ukraine for refugee families. We worked in Israel, and we are still working in Israel, especially after the October 7th attacks. And what brought me to New York was to help the children who have arrived, the refugee children, migrant families who have arrived to New York City, who are now being housed in shelters, accommodated shelters, and who also don't have access to any sort of early childhood.
Amazing. I think that all of the viewers can unanimously establish that you are extraordinary, not just the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. And I have a question for you, because you did mention that you've done work in Africa, you've been doing work for refugee children from the Ukrainian conflict and post October 7th, and now you're here in New York to deal with migrant children. And the question that comes to my mind is, you have to be pretty culturally adept to deal with children from so many different backgrounds, different narratives. It's not just that it's a victim narrative, that they have trauma and issues, but there's a lot of cultural considerations. I wonder if any uniform principles or protocols that you've developed, or that in your experience you're aware of, that helps you sort of cross these cultural divides in a way that access these children as children, but still accounts for the cultural differences that speaks to them as individuals with their own unique kind of cultural world that they're coming from.
I love your question. I think it's a great question. And I think you really hit something spot on. I'll start by saying that there are universal needs for young children, I think. And the number one need that we're trying to create and to provide is creating a safe and stable environment for children who have gone through so much chaos. So no matter what kind of chaos or trauma or upheaval that they've experienced, when they're now in a new space, let's look at the children here in New York. They're now living in a hotel, right, in a room with their families. They've gone through months and months on this really arduous journey to get here. They've probably lived through quite a lot of trauma in their home country for their parents and their family to decide to get them to this place. And now they're living in a hotel, and this is actually very, I think, typical of many refugees. They're living sort of in a situation where they don't know what's going to happen to them in the next months, in the next year. I mean, their parents are usually probably working very hard and trying to create something that's stable, but at the moment, nothing is really very stable. So what we're trying to create is a stable and secure environment. We do this by providing early childhood safe spaces. So these early childhood safe spaces this is not only this is one of many programs, but when we look at our early childhood safe spaces, we provide a space that provides all sorts of opportunities for creativity, for expression, for communication. We talk a lot about the 6 C's. So I just talked about 3 of them: communication, creativity, curiosity, caring and empathy, coordination, making sure there's some physical, opportunities for them, and coping with change. And so these are the sort of the 6 principles that we try to provide in an early childhood safe space. And that's something that we can do it, and we can do it in so many different ways. And when we look at the different cultural differences, or the different cultures that we have clients coming from, what we do is what we try to do in all of our programs is we train the moms. So we have mother refugees that are also usually displaced, that are looking for a lot of them are looking for something to do, or for something to how they can provide for their family and their children. And so we've been able to actually provide training to a lot of the mothers. And I say mothers because there are very few fathers. So I'm going to say mothers that are doing this. We train them through our early childhood programming. We provide all sorts of mentorship and supervision, and they are the ones running the space. So it's people that are coming from the children's culture, that speak the language, that know, that know what they've lived through and where they've come from. And I think that this actually provides an extra safe space, an extra section to how would I explain it? It's another sort of layer of safety or security that children feel when they have people that are coming from the community or from their culture, or from the countries that are actually running the space. And it also provides training for the moms. So the moms in New York City, for example, at the moment, I'm trying to see how we can partner with different vocational programs so they can actually we can provide a certificate for them. And once they do get their working papers, they can continue working and they have opportunity to work in early childhood.
Amazing. So just to bring in a little bit of technical pointers, for people who work in the O1 space, and I have mentioned this on other podcast episodes before, that to qualify for either O1A or O1B status, you need to show that you meet at least 3 out of a list of about 6 evidentiary criterion. And sometimes an individual will actually qualify for both because they're not identical categories. And lately, I'll just CIS has sort of ratcheted up its scrutiny across the board on adjudication of O1B cases. And I won't get into the details there because they actually don't pertain to Sarah's case, because we managed to successfully get her case approved without a request for evidence. Yay for us.
Yay for you, you're amazing.
Pardon?
I said, yay for you, you're amazing for doing it. Yeah.
But I did sit with, the statutes O1A versus O1B. And even though generally speaking, O1As carry a higher burden, so the standard of proof there, once you have demonstrated you provide evidence in at least 3, that on balance, that shows that you're among a select few at the very top of your field. So people always want to know, well, what does that mean? Numerically, it's like top 10% or so, not really defined, but very high level, right? Whereas O1B, you just have to show prominence in your field, that you're known. So in my professional opinion, the burden is actually a little bit lower for O1B cases versus O1A, but actually we wound up qualifying Sarah based on O1A due to the categories, and among those that we used were that there's published material about you, naming you as the subject of a piece for the obviously extraordinary work that you've done, that you've written articles in the field, maybe we'll discuss that briefly, and that you've served in a critical capacity for distinguished organizations for which you have, dealing with governmental bodies, etc. And even your own company that you co-founded is distinguished and widely referenced in media sources. But I'm going to take you now just to a question. I remember there was an article that you had written yourself, and forgive me, I don't remember the exact substance of it now, but it was published in a pretty big name news outlet in Washington, D.C. I think it's based in Washington, D.C. And so I remember thinking, that stands out for me now, thinking about how I prepared your case. Wow, that's pretty amazing. She had an article published in said publication, which has a very wide circulation. Do you remember what the subject of that article was, and how does it have a bearing on on the project that you're working on now here in New York, or tell us how that relates to overall the trajectory of your career so far?
Yeah, I think the article you are talking about is the one that was published in The Hill, which is published. It's in the DC area. That was an article, it was an opinion piece that I wrote about the war in Ukraine that was happening, and the lack of awareness, or the lack, sort of the importance of having to provide something for children at the moment, because I think it was at the time where the war had been going on for a year already, and now it's already over 2 years. And there's one sentence there that really sticks out, which I use a lot now, which is, early childhood is now for these children. It doesn't wait. These children are growing. And so there's a real sense of urgency, even though people don't really feel it when we're talking about early childhood. There's only a few years where we can have that impact to help these children, and to support them, and to provide opportunities for them to develop in sort of in ways that they wouldn't have. So So we really need to do it now, and that's what I tried to get across in that article, where the urgency of early childhood, that we need to do it now, that young children are not going to be young children forever. They're going to grow, and this is the time that we have the most impact. So we really need to create programs and support them now. And if that means by providing early childhood safe spaces, by providing opportunities for them to create and to develop and to have opportunities to play and to socialize and to problem solve and to be independent and just do all these things that young kids. We really believe in early starters that this is a right. This is a child's right. It's not something that we provide because we want to. It's a right that every child has the right to have the possibility the opportunity to develop, and the opportunity to play and to talk and to do all these wonderful things, create that the children should be doing. So yeah, I was really excited to have that article actually published. I thought it was great, and it's fun. We're still working on doing that. Thanks.
So I usually include. Oh, sorry, there's a little bit delay, and I apologize for seems like we're having some tech issues. So sorry, all the viewers out there in Facebook land and would be YouTube. Sorry for the delay and for interrupting you, Sarah. I do also just like to give the clients an opportunity who have worked with me personally, and I have a very boutique approach to my practice because often my clients are friends, and then my clients, or they're my clients and then my friends. And I do feel like much as I'm sure you do, that the will in somebody's life, Do you want to share for the viewers just very briefly, what was your experience like working with me and my firm, and, some pointers and things that stand out to you that you would tell other people who are, in the same situation or considering undertaking the O1 process and are anxious about it?
First off, I would say that, a lot of people are like, oh, what's the big deal? It's just, a few forms that you have to fill out, but it's a huge deal. And you have the ability to sort of like pick exactly what's important to say and say it in a way that really makes me sound extraordinary. And that's a huge thing. I mean, that you are actually one of the extraordinary ability people to be able to take this like a mass, a person has a lot of experience and a lot of different things that they've done in their lives, but to be able to take what's important out of there and show it and create some sort of an application, I guess, that says, look at all these wonderful things that this person has done, and this is why they're extraordinary, is something that I've never seen that from anyone other than you, Candice, to be able to do that. Like I was thinking, well, what's so extraordinary about me? Okay, I've done a few things. Like, how can we prove this? I mean, I don't understand, and there's no way I would have had that strategic sort of mindset that you do. So that's incredible, I really think, and I really appreciate that from you. I think that you're extremely, extremely smart and intelligent, and you're able to just come up with exactly what you need in order to prove the case. And yeah, congrats. So my pointer would just be to
follow up. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I would just say my pointer would be just to like follow your lead, just to, you say you need this and this and this, and just give you what you need and just do it and be like, and trust the process, because it's you absolutely 150% know exactly what you're doing.
Thank you so much. I only have 2 follow-up comments on that. Wisely, if I had $1 for every time somebody said to me, isn't your job just filling out forms? And and
Yeah,
then second,
really
I think it escaped me in my mind.
Sorry.
The other point is escaped me. I just want to now take the opportunity to thank you so very much. I mean, we both touch on the immigration issue from different directions, me with the visa process and you from an early childhood education process. And I know that you'll share the sentiment that I have, that one of the migrants or immigrants, or whatever term you want to use, is that you're kind of interacting with a person no matter where they're coming from or what they're going to, whatever their stature is, whatever their ethnic background, socioeconomic status. It's kind of irrelevant, because you're interacting with people at a very vulnerable point in their lives, where they're moving from one point to another. They're going from one level of security to an insecure space, and not sure about, where their feet are going to land necessarily. And each of us kind of steps in to try to provide that firm footing as much as we can. I'm subject ultimately to the discretionary determinations of USCIS, but I do try to provide, where possible, my professional insight and guidance. And I'm honored that you relied on that and retained me, and that we got successful results in your case. Here's the other point, is that the O1B or O1A process specifically has a lot to do with self-esteem, because the other comment that I hear very frequently is, I'm not extraordinary. And I say, well, I'll decide that, and then USCIS will adjudicate it. So many times people don't believe that they are extraordinary, but it is a term of art. So it's, a legal assessment, really. But I think that, as I had said before, that we all can unanimously agree that you certainly are. USCIS has endorsed and validated it, and we all look forward to seeing, the amazing contributions that you will continue to make here in the United States with your programs. And I just wish you all the success and luck in doing that. And thank you for coming on the show today.
Thank you so much, Candice, to you and to everything that you've done. Thank you.
You've been tuning into Extraordinary Ability with your host, Candice Ackermann. Learn how you may qualify for O1, EB1, and IW visas. Please visit www.visalawpros.com to contact us and for other episodes. Thank you for your positive feedback, comments, questions, and for sharing this show with others.